The following is a special presentation of ABC Sports.
Tension is the key in IndyCar today. It washes through the pits, affecting everyone. Tension can cause accidents. It causes tempers to flare. It causes drivers to reach out in anger. Is it because the IndyCars already have run 4 races in 3 countries and crossed the equator 4 times? Or is it the closeness of the competition? Or is it this man, Jimmy Vasser, who's won 3 of the 4 races? His Honda Renard shod with Firestones is the combination to beat. Can they catch Vasser? He won on the Miami Oval and lost on the Oval in Rio. Today, the IndyCars are on the blindingly fast bull ring at Nazareth. This is Paul Page, and it's a record crowd at Nazareth Speedway for the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix. Cars already sitting down, ready to fire their engines. Let's go to Jack Arute.
1 year ago, there might have been 1, maybe 2 photographers chronicling Jimmy Vasser's entrance into his car. But not today, because he's the current point leader on the PPG IndyCar World Series. Now for Vasser, winning 3 out of the first 4 races has set a new stage for him. He has a different attitude about things. He is really confident about getting ready to run today in the Nazareth race, even though it's not the best of qualifying efforts. One important thing to remember, he's Firestone shod, has Honda powered. But more importantly, Vasser has made the big time. This week he debuted his brand new, very expensive motorhome. He says, next, I'm going to take a look at a plane. Gary?
Well, 1 row right in front of him. In fact, Jimmy Vasser is the man who starts from the pole position. When you talk about confidence on this whirlwind of a racetrack, I don't know if anybody's got more confidence than Paul Tracy. Look what he did yesterday in qualifying. The first ever on a mile oval to go under 19 seconds, 18.87 seconds, nearly 191 miles per hour. That puts him on the pole, but only by a blink of an eye over Emerson Fittipaldi. Paul Tracy dedicated that pole yesterday to the memory of his uncle Jim Tracy, who passed away this past week in England. He said he would love to be able to dedicate a race victory to his late uncle here today. Paul?
Well, before we move too far ahead on the race upcoming, which should be terrific, let's go back to the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach 2 weeks ago, because you saw that confrontation between Greg Moore and Christian Fittipaldi. Well, Christian Fittipaldi has been fined $5,000 as a result of contact with Greg Moore that he instigated. But after the race, there was a confrontation between the team from Pac West and the team from Newman Haas Racing, and so $5,000 penalties have been assessed to both of those teams as well. And as a result of that, Carl Haas of Newman Haas Racing has filed a protest saying he doesn't think that that's a valid fine. And then Michael Andretti, the chief steward, Wally Dallenbach, says for a kind of an accumulated group of offenses this year has now been put on probation, and what the probation is strictly a matter between Michael Andretti and the chief steward, Wally Dallenbach. Now, let's go over to Bobby Unser. He's here. Danny Sullivan is testing for the 24-hour Le Mans. Bobby, they call this an oval. It's not really, and it is tough.
Paul, it's a very distinct tri-oval with 3 different turns and 3 different straightaways. And I mean real turns. Number 1 turn, for example, has an elevation change between there and number 2 turn, 87 foot downhill, the way the cars are going to go faster. So when you go in number 2 turn, you're really going nearly 200 miles an hour. Then, for example, on the front straightaway, it's real sharp turn right in front of us here, making it very difficult to see very far around the racetrack because you're turning almost all the time.
All right, well, we're fairly close to the start of the engines and the start of the race. When we come back, we'll take a look at how they line up for the run, and we'll be ready to go green. Well, the engines have started and the cars are rolling on the track, so let's take a look at the starting grid on the pole. Paul Tracy, his 9th career pole with a new track record, over 190 miles an hour, alongside Emerson Fittipaldi. He's won 3 times here at Nazareth, including last year. In the second row, Jimmy Vasser, the winner of 3 of 4 races this year, and Scott Pruitt, who has finished in the points in every race this season. In row 3, Michael Andretti, who won the first race ever held here, and Al Unser Jr. In row 4, it's Robbie Gordon, who has finished 4th in 2 of his 3 starts at Nazareth, and Bobby Rahal, whose last win came here in 1992. In row 5, it's Alex Zanardi and Christian Fittipaldi. The 6th row, Raul Boesel. and Brian Herta, who did get started. In row 7, it's Greg Moore and Stefan Johansson. In row 8, it's Andre Ribeiro and Mauricio Gugelmin. In row 9, Gil de Ferran and Adrian Fernandez. In the 10th row, Teo Fabi and Mike Roth. In row 11, Eddie Lawson and Parker Johnstone. The 12th row, Jeff Krosnoff and Pupo Moreno. And in row 13, Juan Manuel Fangio and Hiro Matsushita. So that's the lineup here, and as the cars begin to circulate the track, there's what it looks like. Passing zones and trouble zones. Now, one thing to point out, between 2 and 3, as Bobby Unser has already mentioned, it falls off nearly 90 feet down to the turn. Now, in today's field, there's the engines and the tires. And the stories we'll be looking at that we've already mentioned, Michael's probation, Penske Power is hit back. How about the Goodyears? Are they ready to go racing? And is there engine parity? Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Paul, one thing that you always see in the mile ovals because of the quick laps is this flag. It's popularly known as a move-over flag, but in fact, it is not a command. It's an advisory flag that Jim Swintel will display. It lets drivers know that somebody's coming up behind them. It basically means hold your line, watch your mirrors. You're going to see an awful lot of this on this amazingly fast oval here at Nazareth today. Jack?
Well, so fast is the racetrack here. What they're going to do, Gary, is they position flagmen around the corners with that passing flag and the yellow flag as well. Paul, a lot of action at Nazareth.
All right, so you ride on board with that new camera that we debuted 2 weeks ago on Christian Fittipaldi's car. We've got a camera, too, on Robbie Gordon as well, several as a matter of fact. And Bobby Rahal, our traditional nose cam there, and Jimmy Vasser. See whether or not he today can continue his tremendous performance. And, of course, Michael Andretti, you saw him there. There's the front row, Paul Tracy in the number 3 red and white car. And the bright red car, that's Emerson Fittipaldi. Look how close they are. As they come off the corner, look for the green. There it is, and here we go.
Terrible start, Paul. I was really surprised to do the green on that one. Tracy was really loaded for bear.
Well, Jim Swintel talked about that, and he said, because it's so tight here coming off the corner, if they come off that way, we will go green. What he didn't want was a slow start where everybody gets bottled up and ends up in an accident. So they got away safe and clean. He did exactly what he told the drivers that he would do. So Paul Tracy pulls away the leader, 1 lap already into the record books, with Tracy leading it, followed by Fittipaldi. Scott Pruitt runs up into the 3rd position. On board with Bobby Rahal now. There's your leader.
Now, Paul Tracy's had about a 3-mile-an-hour average advantage on everybody at the track. Paul also has more test miles, it's been rumored here, instead here, than the other drivers all combined. He tests here for the Roger Penske team an awful lot.
Well, this is, in fact, Penske's home track. Their shop at Reading is not all that far away, and so they are able to get down here quite a bit and test. Tracy said, I've tested in rain, I've tested in snow. He does have a tremendous number of miles. There's Scott Pruitt coming off the corner in 3rd. That's Jimmy Vasser just behind him, and behind Vasser is Michael Andretti.
That's Scott Pruitt right there in the red and white car. That's Ford power. We'll have to tell the people as we go along off to what the engine powers are on these cars, so because there is a difference, and there isn't a parity yet. Certainly they're getting a little bit closer together, we can tell by this race. But this racetrack is going to be a driver's track. Watch it all day long as we watch the race. It's going to be a driver's track, more so than most of the tracks we have.
Michael Andretti with Al Unser Jr. closing in on Michael. And so no changes at the front of the order. And the nice thing about these short little bull rings, well, laps roll off so very, very quickly.
19 seconds around.
And now the leaders, look at that, already closing down on Hiro and on Fangio. So in just a short period of time, the leaders are already on top of the back of the field with just 6 laps into the book.
He's got to be really careful. It's hard to pass here. Of course, Emo, you can see right behind him in the red car right there. That makes it easy for Emo. If Tracy happens to pick the wrong side to pass somebody, Emo's going to have an advantage. He can have a choice which side he goes on.
Bobby Unser told you about how unusual this track is in shape. Well, this will give you a good idea as we look down from above. And we watch the leaders. Red and white, of course, is Tracy. The red car is Fittipaldi as they close on slower traffic. There they come onto the tri-oval, what is the front stretch. There's the start finish. There's turn 1. They've got a warm-up lane down on the inside of the track. Now you're on the back stretch and they're running downhill. Right here is where they enter the pits if they come in for their stops. Turn 3 and turn 4. Gary mentioned that move over flag. Since the start, I've been keeping an eye over on the starter stand. I don't think he's put it away.
A lot of traffic out there. Big difference in the speed.
And now Scott Pruitt comes through traffic as well. All of the leaders handling up the traffic. Jimmy Vasser closing on Pruitt as we climb on to Jimmy Vasser's car in 4th.
That's going by the Toyota there. The 36 car Vasser just went by is Juan Fangio. That's Gurney's new Toyota. An only American chassis in the field.
Dan Gurney's All-American. You had some great successes with him, didn't you?
Had many good years with Dan Gurney.
So Jimmy Vasser trying to play catch-up now with Scott Pruitt as they run through traffic. And look at Michael Andretti. He's all over the back end of Jimmy Vasser's car. On board with Michael.
Easiest way to pass, remember, is to catch the guy in front trying to pass somebody and he can't complete the pass. Like, for example, Michael, if he could have caught him right there, he could have maybe made a pass on the opposite side. It's a gamble, but often it works.
And there you see, too, just how very tough it is to get by, even though they are slower, because the line of this track will narrow down on you very quickly. Michael Andretti runs in 5th place. Paul Tracy still leads. Emerson Fittipaldi right behind him, and then Scott Pruitt. And back at the front of the field as Tracy continues to work his way through traffic. And he is doing it with some considerable thrill. 12 miles now complete. We're back, the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix, and we are under yellow. That's Fangio's car there. And he got together with Hero. Hero was able to make it into the pits and back out. Take a look at this view from on top of the CART IndyCar Safety 1 truck. Gives you a better view now of exactly how the situations develop, and also this idea that how fast these cars come past. The safety team, Lon Bromley says, you know, sometimes they just use us as an apex when they come by. So we're under yellow here, and they'll get Fangio's car off of the track. Hero back in the action, so apparently no serious damage there, but no, he comes back into the pits for a second time. So we'll keep track of the progress of both, and let's take you back and go down to Jack Arute.
Well, let's update you on how Jimmy Vasser's ride is going so far. He's radioed into his crew that he is suffering from understeer. Now, what that means is the car wants the nose to go out towards the wall. Now, they've determined that they're going to stay out, no major problem. If the track doesn't come to them, what they will do is they will make a wing adjustment in the front wing during the first pit stop. That should come, Gary Gerould, around lap 60 or so.
And Jack, we're watching the crew and officials checking over Hiro Matsushita's car. You can see that there's significant damage to the side pod on the left side, and now the engine is shut off. They were checking around the gearbox, around the wings, also all the suspension pieces, both front and back. And for whatever reason, they have told Hiro to shut it down, at least for the moment. No indication if he'll be able to try to get back out there or not. But contact early, and that's what we talk about, and how quickly things happen and how devastating they can be on this fast oval.
And you can see just behind Hero, well, a few pits back, that's Fangio as they take a look, especially at the right front on his car. Now, while we've got a little lull here, and we don't have many of them, you may remember back at Rio a grinding crash that did some serious damage to Scott Goodyear's back. Well, the good news is that his back is coming back, and he's here in the booth with us today. Good to see you, Scott. How is it going?
Well, thank you. We're back, but we're not back in the capacity that we'd like to be back in, obviously. Mike Roth has subbed in our car for us this weekend. So we're watching, and the back's coming along very well, thank you. But we still anticipate it'll be the Detroit Grand Prix before we're back driving.
All right, we're going to keep track of you for a few minutes here. We're ready to go back to green flag, so stay with us a moment if you would, Scott. Good to hear, though, that you will be back in a car very soon. They will come back to green flag with Paul Tracy leading Emerson Fittipaldi, Scott Pruitt, Jimmy Vasser, Michael Andretti, and Al Unser Jr. As the pace car on this track pulls off on the backstretch. And that puts the race under the control right now of Paul Tracy, the race leader. So he gets to bring him back at whatever speed he chooses.
Boy, and he got a good jump at him. Paul is really hot this track. I don't think I've seen him this racy for the last probably at least a year. He's really hot today.
On board with Bobby Rahal. Just before the yellow, he was really trying to work on Al Unser Jr. But Al got a good start there too, and so Rahal's having to defend against Robbie Gordon.
Of course, every time they have a yellow flag, they all bunch up. That's an opportunity to pass because you don't have to gain on somebody under the green or fast laps.
Oh, wait a minute. You didn't just say that you can pass under yellow, did you, Bobby?
No, I didn't say that for sure. It's the time to get up close to it.
I know sometimes you get confused about that. Jack Arute?
Well, Al Unser Jr. may be having just a little bit of a problem, not a mechanical one. He wants to conserve his tires. He's been talking back and forth to Roger Penske saying, I'm doing the best to conserve my tires. That would lead me to believe that while these are brand new Goodyears and they're going very well, they're not convinced and they want to have as much as they can towards the end of the fuel window, towards the end of the stop, down around lap 50 or so. So don't look for him to press too hard in the early going.
Al Unser Jr. there just ahead. By the way, he is on a real high. Yesterday at Talladega in the International Race of Champions, the Indy cars finished first, second, and third, with Al Unser taking the victory. You'll see coverage of that race right here on ABC Sports on the 30th of June.
And what Jack was saying about the tires blistering, historically here we blister tires. They get hot, sometimes they come apart. This has been going on since this track was built. The reason for it is there's an awful lot of turn compared to the straightaway. So the tires are almost always under a lot of pressure or sliding. Often the tire makes a difference on who wins the race right at the very last too, Paul.
Tracy leads it, followed by Fittipaldi, Scott Pruitt. Most unusual track. Both Fangio and Hero remain in the pits. Further on Al Unser Jr., Gary.
Well, Paul, just a quick update on those Goodyears. The primary tire here was a modification of the tire used in Rio de Janeiro by Goodyear. They determined it was too hard, so the option tire much softer on the right side only, and the Penske cars did qualify on the option tire. That's why I think they're so concerned about tire wear, because they want to make sure that they can get the distance.
Paul Tracy, very definitely on the fly, and Emerson trying to catch him. But Emerson has been lagging back about half a second as they fight traffic.
You can see how good Paul Tracy's handling. He's working the high groove. Now you have to be able to pass the slower cars on the high end. There's Emil going by the low coming off of turn 3 there, or what we normally call turn 4. 3 turns on the racetrack, but sometimes we divide them up by entering and exiting. We're on board with Robbie Gordon there. You can get an idea how fast it really looks.
On board, camera mounted on the side plate on the wing on Robbie Gordon's car. Scott Goodyear, can you learn anything while you watch this about how those cars are going to run? Here's one of your competitors.
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting to see, and I know that everybody's concerned about tires like we've talked about here, and everybody, I was surprised not to come in and change to the primary tires on that first yellow. Means they're pretty happy. The cool temperature here is agreeing with it, and if they keep the cars underneath them, they'll be able to keep cool, consistent laps. They might get a full fuel load on this optional set of tires.
Well, Michael Andretti just came around Parker Johnstone. Directly in front of him, that's Scott Pruitt, and that is a battle for third place.
We have kind of a cool day here today. In fact, it's a little bit cold sometimes. And what that means to the track is the track, as it cools down or as it's colder, the tires cool down the same. In other words, if the track were 15 or 20 degrees cooler than normal, which it is today, that means the tires are going to run that much cooler. So then they can run a softer tire and lean on the tire, drive it a little bit harder than they could hypothetically against last year's.
Michael comes down inside Scott Pruitt and gets him coming off the corner. So Michael Andretti in front of his hometown crowd up into third place as Scott Pruitt falls back. Paul Tracy is still the leader, and we'll be back with more from Nazareth after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Tonight here on ABC, an hour of America's Funniest Home Videos, followed by a brand new Lois and Clark. And then the most provocative movie of the year, starring Michelle Green and Joe Penny. She Woke Up Pregnant, on the Sunday Night Movie tonight here on ABC. Well, the battle seems to be back about Scott Pruitt in 4th place. You ride with him now, and everybody lined up behind him are all fighting for positions. Let's go to the pits and Jack Arute.
When you watch, Scott Pruitt was battling with Jimmy Vasser. Vasser had the push condition wrong for Scott Pruitt. He's loose. So he's been adjusting the bars on board, Bobby Unser, trying to solve that loose condition.
All right, so Scott Pruitt, there he is. As they try to improve that position, Pruitt's one of only 3 Firestone shod cars in the top 10. Let's move back a little bit. Jimmy Vasser as he chases Pruitt.
And as Jack brought up about the tires, the guys going into push, the problem is with the drivers is when they don't have yellow flags or they keep a race speed going on for a long time, it really is hard on the right front and the right rear of the tires. And then the cars start handling different because the tire gets a little too hot. So if the driver has his car balanced where he pushes the front end or it doesn't turn too good, makes the right front go away. If it's loose, the right rear goes away, and of course that's the worst of the two.
Well, you can see by this that Fangio is back on the track, and Bobby Rahal is moving up. He's gotten around Little Elm, runs in 7th place right now. Greg Moore, who started 13th, is now up to 5th place.
A little bit more on the Toyota, Juan Fangio's car there, Paul. It's the first year. It's the first year for the Toyota engine. It's all experimental right now. They're not quite there with it, but they need all the laps they can put on it.
And you saw the interval back to Emerson Fittipaldi. Now see with our constant track here of the race itself, Michael Andretti closing down on Emerson Fittipaldi, Scott Goodyear.
Well, it looks like he's getting caught up in a bit of a battle here, trying to get past some lap traffic, and looks like it's probably Zanardi. And the key thing right now is that these guys are thinking, I hope these tires are working, as we talked about earlier. It's lap 47, the fuel window somewhere around lap 70. Anything happens, the guys will certainly be in maybe to get some changes, as Bobby talked about, with changing the car for handling characteristics.
Michael Andretti's in front of the hometown crowd. You've had that pleasure at our race in Toronto. Does it make a difference?
It certainly does. You're very busy here for the week before the event. There's a lot of functions to go to, especially with the name Andretti here in Nazareth. And I suspect by the time you get into the car, you put your helmet on, slide into the cockpit, and it's all of a sudden solitude. You have a quietness, you get your job done because you've had a very hectic week.
The downhill run on the backstretch into turn 3 as you look down from the Honda Helicam. And just that quickly off of 4 into the tri-oval. They've been turning laps at a fairly incredible pace. Leader's speed average is up at 146, but that's with the yellow. The race record is above that, and they'll be closing in on that, I think, fairly quickly here, because they have run now for 50 laps, or a quarter of the race, without but 1 yellow.
There's Greg Moore in the blue and white car, really getting going right now, Paul.
Yeah, he's closing down on a fight here that is bringing him up through the front of the field and bringing him into contact for the lead as he just got around Pruitt and now sets his sights on Michael Andretti.
Greg Moore is a young man, very young, Canadian. I think he's one of the brightest stars that we have coming up in IndyCar racing. He annihilated the Indy Lights last year. A lot of people didn't think he'd do. That's him right there in the blue and white car. A lot of people didn't think he'd do that good this year in the Indy cars. But he's already looking like a star.
9 cars.
I wonder if we have too many Canadians here. We got one set next to us.
You said that right here in front of Scott. That's good.
And there's more in their way, I think, up there too.
I think so.
Greg Moore has certainly been impressive. It was at this track about 3 years ago that I remember watching him waiting outside the rails to talk to several of the IndyCar owners, but he was so polite. He didn't want to, as many, in fact, spectators have done. They've gotten tossed out, but he didn't even want to go in and violate the area of the garage. On board now with Michael Andretti. Emerson sits just ahead, and the report is now that Hero is out of the race. And Jack Arute, you can update us on Parker?
Parker Johnstone has his hands full. His car was so loose, gentlemen, that he said, I've got to come onto pit road. They changed one tire, and they also went and they put some more wing in the front of the car. He said, I just can't handle a mile here for even another 10 or 12 laps.
Well, Michael now trying to overhaul second place Emerson Fittipaldi. Paul Tracy has 2.5 seconds on Fittipaldi since we came back to the single green that the single yellow that we've had thus far.
Now Michael and Emo, here's two guys that are really in good shape right now. We saw Michael earlier in the day. He's been going to the gym an awful lot. He's been working out. He knows that these Indy cars are very hard to turn. The camera doesn't show how hard they really are to turn, but there's very fast steering, very hard physically, and especially at this track. Emerson Fittipaldi, one of the toughest guys I've ever known.
Paul Tracy leads it. The first car for routine stop is in and out, and that's Mauricio Gugelmin. There's your last lap run for Fittipaldi and for Andretti. So Michael quicker on the track. So with Mauricio already in and out of the pits, and us passing through the 57th lap, we've mentioned that it really opens up right about now. Anytime now we ought to see the leaders have to think about coming into the pits, and of course that'll create a real scramble at the front of the field, because on this track, as we watch the leader Paul Tracy, in and out of the pits can destroy a lead of a race and put you way back, especially if you falter at all in any way on the stop. So the pressure really on the crews.
Really on the crews, and it's really on the drivers to get in and out of the pits as quickly as possible, because if you lose anything in the pits, it's very hard to get it back on the racetrack. Consequently, if the crew can give you a great pit stop and you can gain a position or two, yet you don't have to on the racetrack, it just makes for easy going.
And you know, Scott, it's only 19 to 20 seconds around here. So again, as Paul said, if they've got any mistakes made, they're going to lose a lap in the pits, and that's a destruction thing. You can't make that back. Now, another thing to remember, there's speed limits. They can't go in any faster than the other guys. They all run on electronically controlled rev limiters, so nobody really should be able to violate unless they come in too fast.
All right, so Paul Tracy is in the lead of the race. We'll leave you now, but as we come back, we should see the leaders head into the pits. 59 laps are now complete. Now Michael Andretti continues his pursuit of second place Emerson Fittipaldi. Apparently the yellow has helped out a bit because the crews have now pushed back their stop as we're on the 68th lap. And now they're telling Michael Andretti maybe lap 76 will be the spot we'll bring you in. So that yellow, that played into the hands of the leaders. It's going to let Paul Tracy pull a little further away. He is nearly 6 seconds ahead of Emerson as Michael Andretti moves down inside. Emerson comes up behind his teammate Christian Fittipaldi, and Michael goes into second place.
Yeah, Michael really has been working on that one a long time. I think that's one of the hardest, well, certainly the hardest pass we've seen today. He worked for many laps on that one.
Well, the pass itself was one of those hold your breath deals.
Oh, it certainly was, and here especially because you're always turning at this racetrack, as we talked about before. And Michael dearly obviously wants to have a good finish because he really doesn't have any points so far this year, and to stand on the podium in front of his home crowd, all the better.
So Michael Andretti now in second, but he has nearly 8 seconds, nearly a little shorter than half a lap to try to make up if he wants to catch Paul Tracy. But again, we should be about 6 laps away from the first stop. This will tell us a lot about engine performance in terms of mileage, exactly where some of these stops come. DeFerrin on the pit road already on lap 71.
So many times the fuel has made the difference at the latter part of this race. So we've got to watch for that. Everybody's watch when they stop, who's getting the best mileage. That's going to make a big difference often at the end.
So Emerson Fittipaldi has fallen back into third place, Jack.
Well, Paul, let me tell you how that happened, and this is an issue on short ovals, as you say. There's a lot of rubber that comes off the track. We call it marbles, goes to the outside of the groove. Working race traffic, Emerson Fittipaldi was forced up into the marbles, picked up some of that rubber on his tires, and according to Rick Reineman, it's going to take a few laps for Emo to be able to scrub that back off and get racy again.
Fittipaldi does have some space to make up, but of course, when he makes his stop, you're assuming 4 fresh tires. At least right sides will come in as fresh as we watch Paul Tracy.
Paul has no trouble passing anybody, it appears, any place at any time that he wants to. He's handling as good right now, it appears, as when he started the race.
Brian Herta being passed by Tracy. Herta had a little bit of a problem. They were afraid they weren't going to get the car out to the starting grid or into the field. They were working feverishly on it at the last moment. And then just before the start of the engines, they were able to push it into position, and he was able to take the green along with the rest of the field.
Another thing that's going to be interesting to watch is we mentioned the engines earlier. There's been rumors that Mercedes engines have made a little bit of gain. Honda's been beating everybody this year so far, kind of badly, too much. So Ford and Mercedes have been working hard. A couple of the engines with Ford are different than the others. They're trying new experimental things. And this one right here, Paul Tracy, that's Mercedes. Roger Penske, of course, owns part of that. And they're working, we know, very hard to get the Mercedes back up or even be better than the Hondas.
You can bet anytime somebody gets 100th on you, the engineers go to work on both chassis and engine and tires. Try to get that thing back. Emerson Fittipaldi on the pit road.
And a lot of people wonder, Paul, what does the manufacturer of the engines, the people that build the racing engines do? The main thing they're doing right now is the plenum boxes where the turbo, there's MON. If they change the turbocharger plenum box.
There is Emerson. We mentioned that he was on the pit road. They've got the starter out behind the car, though, Jack.
Well, they've had a problem putting on the right rear tire. The wrench actually locked up, and they had a problem. They thought they were going to stall the car. Emerson, a very costly stop because he had it knocked until that lug wrench locked up.
Oh boy, and Emerson had such a good run going. 25.6 seconds in the pits for Emerson Fittipaldi. Talked about how costly the stops can be. That one's going to be a real killer as Michael Andretti comes in. Well, Michael Andretti, the second place car. Paul Tracy remains out. Remember, they enter the pits over on the backstretch, and Gary Gerould waits for him.
Christian Fittipaldi, his teammate, got out just ahead of him. Michael had to hit the brakes hard and slid into position. Now they went with the primary Goodyear tire, which is a little harder. The Penske team went with the option, which is softer. Michael staying with the primary, but he stalled the engine. They started to roll at 13.5 seconds, and here is one of those miscues that can just cost you the day. Now it fires, it takes over the gears, and here's a burnout.
Look at his eyes. You can just see the misery that he's feeling. World is watching that big mistake, and such an important mistake.
One of the things about racing, it seems like you could go from the top of the world to the bottom in about 3 nanoseconds with something like that.
Well, we say that, and here comes Paul Tracy, and he needs a good clean pit stop so he doesn't have any of the fate that the other two guys did that were directly behind him. And I'm sure that they've seen what's gone on here earlier on with these two other guys, and they'll want a clean stop in and out so he can retain that lead.
Leader is in, Jack.
And we talk about, here we go. He's hit
a real problem with Tracy. He hits the marks and he crashes right up against the wall, gets one of the crewmen, locked it up, and Paul, the crewman, is hurt.
We'll
have to get back to you.
About it. You can see how hard the crewman got hit. Bad mistake. Paul's not going to do a pit stop. He's going to go out, come around while they get organized, and come back in again. They're going to have to replace that crew member, too. Somebody else going to have to take the job over.
What could have happened here?
Locked the front brakes up. He came in too fast, locked the brakes up. Instead of letting the brakes off and driving it on through, right there he hit the crewman. For sure, he's going to have an awfully bad leg or a sore leg no matter what.
Oh, I hate to see that. The one thing that's not protected in the pit stop, of course, is the crew. Michael Andretti. Greg Moore, his team serviced him routinely. He has been in and out. And so now with the stops beginning, everything sorts around. Let's go back to Jack.
Well, this is really not something we like to see. Matt Johnson, who was in charge of the left front tire, was actually hit by Paul Tracy. Now, he's conscious, he's awake, he's talking to the medical technicians right now. It actually, the front wing went up against his leg. So now the emergency medical people here are going to lift him over the wall, and this is not good. The one thing that Paul Tracy said on the radio is, guys, I'm just so very sorry. Now, the difficult part is they need to get Matt out of the way because Tracy needs to come in to take on fuel. Forget tires. This is a very difficult moment for Team Penske and Paul Tracy.
It's about to become more difficult. They're going to give the black flag to Paul Tracy for a safety violation. At least that's what race control has indicated, but for the time being, they're holding off on it. Robbie Gordon in and out. Boy, this thing, very typical of this track, typical of the short ovals. A lot happening all at once. But for the time being, while race control has been considering a penalty against Tracy, they're holding off because of that injury to Mac Johnson. The crew now waits for Paul Tracy to make his appearance. Once again, there he comes.
Well, unfortunate for Paul, things got worse when he left in that black flag penalty for running over the air gun when he left with that left rear. You saw the car get in the air, so it's unfortunate. He's just going to get a penalty on top of making a second stop.
Boy, and that's just absolutely devastating. Paul Tracy looking over. I think he's trying to find Mac Johnson, Jack.
Well, right now, Paul Tracy is trying to get his car back under control. He does light it up, but this is a very difficult several moments. Now, they are continuing to work on Matt Johnson, and what they're doing is they're inspecting his right lower calf and ankle. You know, we've got a great IndyCar safety team, and no sooner had this happened than the IndyCar safety team was already on the spot. Real quick action. Everything, believe it or not, guys, is under control down here.
Now, one of the interesting things about this, and everybody's got to know, Paul Tracy is a professional. As sorry as he is because he hit his crewman, and it's kind of inexcusable in a way, but by the same token, he's got to go back and do a professional job, be a race driver, and keep going to try to win the race.
Get a view there of Greg Moore. That team is celebrating big time because their champion out of last year, out of the players team, was of course Jacques Villeneuve, and he won his first Formula One race today over in Europe at the Nürburgring. And this is the black flag penalty. As you saw the routine stop, the stop and the penalty are two different stops. So there's really a triple penalty on Paul Tracy.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, the stop like that on a black flag really means basically almost a full lap. It could be a lap, and that's really tough here. Kind of takes a guy out of competition.
Well, and with that stop, he dropped steadily down in the order from 7th to 8th to 9th. EDS scoring, of course, gives us fantastic scoring on a track like this, so very helpful. Alex Zanardi heading for the pits with a problem, keeping track of the leaders, and the new leader you got a glimpse of there, Michael Andretti, followed by Al Unser Jr. and then Greg Moore.
You can see there's Zanardi just coasting in. The bad thing about this is that if another car comes into the pits way back there, I would just think it. It's happened before. It's not wide enough for two unless the guy really scoots over a bunch. You can watch for those type of things.
Unser Jr., second place. Greg Moore right behind him. So this is where the fight develops now, with Michael Andretti as the new leader of the race. After some terrible fortune befell the leader of the race, Paul Tracy. And the indication is that Zanardi, in fact, was out of fuel coming into the pits.
And that shows you he was going about 91 laps, Paul. You just can't go that far, it looks like.
So Michael Andretti is out in front. Al Unser Jr. and Greg Moore battling with Tracy right there as well.
A little bit more explaining. Before the pit stops, I started explaining about the engines, what they changed. The plenum, that's where the turbocharger pumps the air into the engine, is one of the places. The other place, they tried different camshafts. And these are really nice place to test on ovals where you can keep the RPM up all the time. So a lot of the guys, a lot of the engines are trying different camshafts here.
Greg Moore is right there at the back of Al Unser Jr. Paul Tracy behind Moore, but Tracy is 2 laps behind the race now, thanks to that problem in the pits. But Greg Moore, he's been working little Al.
He's doing a great job. He's going to sit back and just watch his time. Remember, we're just coming up to halfway in the race. There's another pit stop to happen yet. Won't risk anything. He'll just sit back and maybe learn a little bit from Al Jr. at the same time.
But go to school on Al Unser Jr. Scott Goodyear, we know you've got some other obligations. Thanks very much for spending some time in the booth, and we hope to see you back at the Grand Prix at Detroit on Belle Isle. So we'll keep track of the leader, Michael Andretti, and this battle between Unser and Moore. We're back at Nazareth. Coming up next, we'll have some of the greatest moments in the history of sports television. Relive over 3 decades of triumph and tragedy on ABC's Wide World of Sports 35th Anniversary Special presented by Cigna. That's next here on ABC Sports. And even the teams here recognize the lineage of sports greatness that comes with 35 years at Wide World. Here's the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. as 104 laps are complete. We're just past the halfway point, 200 laps, 200 miles. Race record here is held by Nigel Mansell at 158 miles an hour. Let's go on board with Christian Fittipaldi. And we'll ride with him in 6th place. He's looking for Bobby Rahal up ahead on the track, but boy, look how the leaders come flying through there. I mean, this is a 6th place car. That shows you how much faster the leaders are.
Yes, well, there goes Greg Moore.
Yeah. Unsure than Moore?
You would have to. Christian is not up where he belongs on the track, Paul. He's in a slow groove, going very slow. Very slow doesn't mean really slow.
Let's go to the pits once again, get an update on that situation in the Penske pits. Jack?
Well, Paul, it's real good news. Matt Johnson, who the team calls Sven. Now, I said he was the left front tire carrier, actually tire changer. Let me tell you, he got hit so hard, he was actually in the left rear and was catapulted to the front of the car. I spoke to him as he was going to the infield infirmary. He said it is his left knee that is twisted about, but he said he's okay. Gave the thumbs up signal to everybody as he went down pit road, and that's real good news, Gary Gerould.
Christian Fittipaldi, Jack, has come in, and they're changing all 4 tires. There seemed to be some confusion from the crew. I suspect that being the case, he may have suspicion, he being Christian, that a tire might have been going down. He gets the fresh rubber, and he's gone.
Now, just so everybody knows on this going down, these tires have no inner liners, no tubes. They're also very, very thin, not much rubber on the top. Of course, no tread. So it's easy to puncture one. One little rock will get what we call a slow leak, or like Gary said, they go down.
Well, Christian Fittipaldi had just been in the pits about 25 laps earlier. Here's how they fared in and out of the pits. Andretti into 2nd, came out in 1st. Al's stop was 13.9 seconds, and among the leaders, only Bobby Rahals was faster at 13.79. So there's a summary of the first round of regular stops. We're at 110 laps. Michael Andretti is the leader, followed by Little Al, Greg Moore, Emerson Fittipaldi. Bobby Rahal is 5th. Remember, his last win came here 54 races ago. Paul Tracy sits in 6th now, but remember too, he's a lap behind the leader. He's able to make up one of the 2 laps he went down. Scott Pruitt is just behind Jimmy Vasser, who's in 7th. Adrian Fernandez is now 9th, and Fernandez started in 18th. We saw Jimmy Vasser's teammate Alex Zanardi in and out of the pits. Report was out of fuel, Gary?
Well, that's what they thought, Paul, but the computer said they'd used 37 gallons, so there should have been some there. As it turned out, he was out of fuel. They got him reserviced, restarted. He's back out there now, but lost considerable time in the process.
And what happens on a deal like that, Gary and Paul, is that the fuel tanks, which are 40 gallons in size, and believe me, they all hold 40 gallons, have to have a real small pickup tank inside of that so as that they can pick the fuel up to the very last drop. Now, what happened with the Zanardi obviously was the fact that it's not working just properly. These guys have to test and retest these things by letting them run out of fuel and keep changing them inside till they can pick up literally the last ounces of fuel.
There's Greg Moore. Paul Tracy trying to work his way back through the field, get back on the lead lap. Michael Andretti is still the leader of the race. He leads now by 5.3 seconds.
One of the things that Roger Penske will try to do with Paul Tracy, or the pit crews that Penske's down there, is that Paul has to go as fast as he can go. He'll be hard on his tires and use a lot of fuel, but Penske's got to try it, or people got to use.
Oh, Marino.
There's a tire running loose. Watch that tire. Watch that tire. This is a danger plate right here. Oh! This is a dangerous thing right here. Very dangerous thing. If you hit that tire, it's bad.
I'd say hitting about anything is bad.
Oh, but that tire, Paul, really worries drivers.
A lot of weight there.
A lot of weight there, and at the speeds they're going, it's disastrous sometimes.
Weight and inertia, and that's a bad combination. So now Michael Andretti, leader of the race, takes advantage of this yellow to head down into the pits. 80 miles an hour, the speed limit on the pit road, as Michael Andretti rolls toward Gary.
Well, Paul, how fickle this business of motorsports can be. Remember the last time Michael was in, he stalled the engine. We thought it would be so costly. He ends up being the race leader after the problems for Paul Tracy. Now he's off to Jackson Hole. This is a sensational stop, 10.5 seconds.
Michael Andretti in and out, made his first stop at the 79th lap. This is the 117th lap. What are they figuring?
Came in on 116. He's liable to have to do another pit stop. I was figuring while you were thinking on that one, because it means that they might be planning on either more yellow flags or another stop in the race.
Little Al's in, Jack.
But remember, guys, they were starting with the optional Goodyear tire. They had switched over during the last stop. We're going to see, yes, they're going with the harder compound tire this time as well. He has completed his action. He puts it back into gear, but he almost stalls it. He refires it. He actually bump started as he came out of pit road.
So both of the Penske cars in and out. They come out behind Jimmy Vasser. And Gil de Ferran sitting over by the edge of the road, and no idea how or why he's there. You assume he drove it. He's got himself a gearbox trouble.
He's got some sort of a problem, but boy, the guy's a good sport. Look how close he got to the wall to get out of everybody's way. He realizes that the road exiting the pit is not wide enough for two cars, hardly.
Roberto Moreno walking back into the paddock area after his incident, and what caused the situation? Well, here it is. Blue and white car, Moreno, he knew he was in trouble with that tire. Well, he sensed that one, just got her off the track.
Well, the lug nut looks like probably came off. It only has one nut on it. Oh, that was the close part there, boy. But at any rate, he felt that thing that wobbled for a while, obviously, before he came off, because you could watch him slow down. He knew he had a problem.
Let's go to the pits again, and Jack.
Well, Paul, the radio report back to Jim Hall and his Pennzoil team from their driver, Gil de Ferran, is that Adrian Fernandez rear-ended de Ferran exiting pit road. That's the problem with Gil.
All right, so we'll keep track of that as well. The wrecker's out on the track. The yellow flag is out. It's our second of the day. Started when Moreno got in trouble, when that wheel assembly came off.
Emerson Fittipaldi came out in second place after all those pit stops, Paul. It's interesting how the pits change things so much.
One of the pieces of excitement the Indy cars have had, there you look at Moreno's disabled car sitting there. One of the pieces of excitement the IndyCar guys have had is a group of them went out to the carrier, the USS Carl Vinson, to pay a visit. So we'll take a look at that, and then we'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Still under yellow at Nazareth. In the month of May, unlike in past years, the drivers in this series will head to Michigan for the US 500. ABC gears up for the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indy 500, featuring the drivers and cars of the Indy Racing League. Our coverage of the Indianapolis 500 time trials begins May 11th. And on Sunday, May 26th, you'll see the race live here on ABC Sports. Well, now we've got some good news for you. Mac Johnson appears to be in pretty good shape. Just a few moments ago, they look at that. How's that for a spare little thumbs up?
Sure smiling a lot after being hit.
Hopefully he only gets away with a little scrape on his knee, but that is a very scary moment. Now, let's think about that first round of pit stops as we watch Al Unser Jr. coming down into the pits again. We said the pits are absolutely critical to you. You saw Paul Tracy come in, have all that trouble. You saw Michael Andretti come in and stall the engine, and yet because of the problems Tracy had, Michael Andretti comes out as the leader of the race. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Jim Hall, you were on the radio with Gil de Ferran. He has brought his car in. He's coming over here shortly, but what did he say to you?
Well, he and Fernandez got together on the pit exit. It collapsed one of the front suspension on the car, so I think we're out of it. But it's a shame because we were going pretty good. We had a little better setup today, and he'd worked his way from 17th to 10th. Was doing a good job on the track, and I think the pit strategy was good. So we were in there, but
you've been around this game a long time, but it looks like you guys just can't cut a break this year.
Well, we've had a few bad breaks this year, but we'll get our turn.
Well, let's get Gil in here. He just got out of the car, and this is not the way we wanted to talk to you, Gil, but what happened on the exit of pit road?
I was getting out of the pits and, you know, just changing up to second gear in the exit of the pits, and Fernandez, I don't know, he tried to get by me before the blending line when the track really narrows up, hit my side, and my car went up in the air and hit the wall. I mean, really silly incident, really.
Well, Paul, you can show better than I where the blend line is, but it's awfully narrow coming out of pit road as well.
Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense that you try to get past somebody before or at. You wouldn't want that close a call. We're back to green flag racing. 127 laps of 200 complete. We saw Al Unser Jr. duck in and out of the pits as we ride with the leader, Michael Andretti. Is he going all the way, do you think?
Yes, he is, Paul. In fact, that's what I was going to mention is that little Al, Penske brought him in. Penske calls his car, and he's going for a gamble. He lost a little bit of time going into the pit. Most importantly, we know that he can go all the way. Roger is gambling. Some of the other cars don't. Now, that's what he's famous for, is being able to outfigure a lot of them.
Other side of that gamble is that Michael Andretti, we're assuming, is saying, hey, we're going to have another yellow before the end of this race, and so they decided not to top up at the last second. Michael's teammate, Christian Fittipaldi, as we watch little Al, Michael's teammate came into the pits, unscheduled stop, obviously, and rolled right back out again. So it's Michael Andretti, Al Unser Jr., Fittipaldi, Greg Moore, Bobby Rahal. That's the top 5.
Now, the way you see different pit strategies and planning going on, you know these car owners are never talking to each other, but every car owner, for example, what Penske did with little Al, is done with every other car owner watching them. So whatever he does, they'll change their plans sometimes, or whatever they might do. For example, Michael Andretti, who's leading the race, caused Penske to change his plans.
IndyCar officials reporting a record crowd here today. And take a look, Emerson Fittipaldi makes a move down inside of Al Unser Jr. And Emerson grabs second place back. But Al, if he's going to go all the way, that's fine, isn't it?
Well, not really, because it could be like you said, Paul. If there's a yellow flag, it's going to show all this planning right out the door.
Jackaroo?
Well, Paul, this is the first deal down, face up. Roger Penske says in the gamble, we're going to try and go the rest of the distance. That's one reason why Emerson Fittipaldi could pass Al Unser Jr. so easily. They're going to have to conserve some fuel for a short period of time before they can release the bridle on Al Jr. Roger Penske would not speak to us, very stoic, and I'll tell you what, you look at that man, he's focused in on trying to win at this, his very own track.
Yeah, I was going to say, stoic or determined. That was a stop-and-go penalty for Christian Fittipaldi for passing the pace car under yellow. And so at the front, Michael has 9 seconds over second place now, Emerson Fittipaldi.
Right there you see little Al and Tracy right behind him. Remember, Paul Tracy is down 2 laps, so it's not a factor to little Al.
Emerson Fittipaldi, you get a glimpse of him there working his way through traffic now. Traffic stretched all the way around the circuit. Let's go on board Scott Pruitt. Scott sits back. Bottom half of the top 10 in 8th place.
That's coming out of what we call turn 1 down the back straightaway, downhill into turn 2, another short straightaway. That's why they back off quite a bit. This is the sharp turn right in front of us, right to the left here. Got to really do that one right. That's a tough one. They back out just ever so little, but not much. Down into turn 1 again. Now coming, accelerating down the back straightaway. This is the only place on the track that they get any relaxation, and you can see it's only 2 or 3 seconds.
Well, if you're wondering what maybe some of the teams are thinking, Carl Haas, who is an avid reader, read about anything you put in front of him, may have read the history of this race just last year, which tied the record for the most yellows at 5. We've only had 2 today. So the prediction might be with 138 laps complete, there will be another. It works out for Michael. If there isn't, it doesn't work out very well at all.
Well, that's for sure, but that's the neat thing about this track. Pit stops are more important here than almost any track, or it would at least equal some of the most important tracks I've ever seen. Makes all the difference in the world on the pits.
On board Robbie Gordon, he's 11th, but Al Unser Jr. is sitting up just behind him. Jackaroo?
Paul, remember when we had our customary meeting with the kart officials this morning? They told us that the Nazareth Speedway was a traditional mile, but they were saying this is a mile ain't a mile in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, that actually this is shorter than a mile. But all the teams were allocated enough fuel to go 200 miles on a 1-mile racetrack. So when you extrapolate that out, a call by Roger Penske, who knows certainly better than anybody else that this is shorter than a mile, to come in a little bit early and try and stretch the fuel mileage, maybe he's got enough fuel on board.
Well, you bring up a really great factor there as well. It's their home track, Penske Racing. And if anybody knows how far they're going to get on this track and what nuances it has, it certainly would be Penske.
Well, I think I did some calculating of my own here, and I've calculated that Little Al has more than enough. He can run wide open all the way, run as hard as he wants. Fuel won't be a problem. His problem, if he has one, should be in tires. He doesn't want to wear out his tires, or Little Al's smart enough to make sure he's got enough tires to last to race, because that's when the race normally happens here.
Well, Gary, what's the story for Michael Andretti's pit?
Not quite as positive in the Newman Haas pit, Paul. He made his stop, Michael Andretti, on lap 117. That means he'd have to go, 83 laps to make it to the end. Well, if you stay green and you're running flat out, normally the max is right around 72 to 75 laps. So they're kind of crossing their fingers, wondering if they'll get some more yellow that would aid them, or if, in fact, if they don't, if he'll have to make a late splash and go.
Now, he could also save fuel by slowing down, but Penske is not going to let him slow down. He's going to keep Little Al pressuring him, which makes Michael use more fuel. We know at least that Little Al has more fuel and can go further than Michael can.
So Michael Andretti, question marks on his car. What is the Penske strategy? Typical mile run here, and it's terrific. IndyCar says we've got another record crowd here today. Michael in traffic and had to back out of it a little bit there as he came across the line and Herta came over. So Michael Andretti, will he be able to hold on to this lead and take it all the way to the 200th mile at the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix? Well, nothing's changed here at Nazareth. The order remains the same. Next Saturday at 2:30 Eastern, 3 Pacific on ABC Sports, we'll head south to Houston as Payne Stewart prepares to defend his title at the Shell Houston Open. And on ABC's Wide World of Sports, it's the first jewel in this year's Visa Triple Crown Challenge. Live from Churchill Downs, the 122nd running of the Kentucky Derby. Coverage begins Friday on Good Morning America, right here on ABC. Well, as we watch Greg Moore closing down on Al Unser Jr. in a developing battle for third place, we can check up on some of the things that we mentioned at the top of the show as to what our concerns might be and what the stories might be in the day. Well, I think very definitely we're looking at some of the engine parity that we thought might occur here, because we're looking at a Ford in front and a Mercedes, and you've got to go down in the order to 6th place to find the first Honda that has been so powerful. Michael's probation, well, he's got a problem. He's in the lead, but he's got to think about it just a little bit. He's got to be very careful, so maybe he can't run with all of the courage that he wants to out in front. And Penske's team, well, it's looking like it's back in the action at least. Jack?
Well, let's update you as well on Jimmy Vasser. Vasser has been chasing a push condition all day. They thought they changed the wing in the front. They thought they'd solved the problem. Then they thought maybe they had a header going bad on them, maybe cracked or something. He's just not having a good day at all. And right now, they're just out there trying to get some points-paying positions.
You're out on board with Jimmy Vasser.
Also a little mention on Emerson Fittipaldi, who's in 2nd place in one of the Penske cars. We haven't mentioned him on the fuel, but he's going to make it, in my calculations, if they're right, he's going to make it to the end, Paul, but he's going to be kind of close.
You know, I can't get over Greg Moore, this great young rookie. I mean, we expected a lot out of him, but he's paid off. Look at him as he sits right behind Al Unser Jr. as we take a look down from the Honda Helicam. Now, when we started this segment after yellow, Little Al was up at the front of the pack. Moore was all the way at the back of the pack and is closed up and is sitting on his back end now.
You know, people look at Greg Moore. He looks like he's about 16 years old. And again, like I said earlier, nobody thought he was going to be this good. He's going to become, and my prediction is right, a real great race driver, somewhat like we had Villeneuve last year.
I mean, it could even be a Bobby Unser.
Did you see Tracy way out of the groove there, almost hit the wall. He was uncontrolled drift there for a while. I thought he was going to get it.
There we say it. Michael Emerson, Al Unser Jr., and the battle with Greg Moore. Gary Darrell.
Checking in with Tony Brunetti, who is in radio contact with Greg Moore. They're delighted with the way the car is handled all afternoon. The first time we checked earlier, they said it was absolutely perfect. Just got another thumbs up. They're good on fuel. They want to get to the podium.
Did you see the pass that Greg Moore just did on Vassar? There's Vassar right there. Greg just passed him. Just did it so nice and so smooth. He looked like he was a 10-year experienced driver.
Second place is Emerson Fittipaldi. Remember, that's where he was going to the closing laps last year and ended up the winner, Jackaroo.
And Rick Reineman watched that last year when he worked for Team Penske. Now with Hogan Penske. Big question, Rick. Can you go the distance?
Yes, we're looking good on fuel. We just need to get through the traffic that is between Mike and us, and we'll be all right.
What about handling with the car? I know you were chasing I think it was a loose condition early.
The only thing he's asking now is how many laps to go, so he knows where he needs to be when we get down to, 10 laps to go.
And Paul, I'll tell you, if you watched Emerson Fittipaldi all weekend, he is really fired up.
Now, Rick Reineman, he's been the chief for Emerson for some time. They've got some victories under their belt. 124th lap was when Emerson stopped.
He's going to make it, Paul. This is Emo's track. He loves this track. I think out of all the tracks on the circuit, this had to be Emo's #1.
Continuing to watch Greg Moore as he comes up behind 8th place Scott Pruitt. Moore, remember, sits in 4th, Gary.
And a further update on Michael Andretti. Remember, he pitted last on lap 117, would have to go 83 to make it to the checkers. There was a little concern earlier. Now they're telling us nothing but optimism. They think they don't have to worry about a possible splash and go, that he too can go to the 200th mile with no problem.
Another thing we want to, boy, look at that Greg Moore going. Another thing we want to keep in mind that they have computers and they have telemetry. What that means is the cars are talking to the pits, telling them what the fuel conditions are. The driver's not doing this thinking.
Yellow flag has come out at the starter stand. Robbie Gordon brushed the wall. Now look at the right side of the car. So Robbie brushes the wall, brings the yellow out. This is what Michael Andretti wants. It's what he needs.
This is what he needed for certain sure. It makes them very happy right now.
But let's think about it. What if
there's Robbie coming out? Boom, he hit it pretty hard. Now, if he doesn't come in and get it checked, he'd be very foolish, but I think Cart would probably make him if he didn't. You know, no driver wants to come in right now, especially Robbie. He's about one of the bravest ones that I know.
Is Robbie the only one that got up there close to the wall, too? We'll keep a track of that one for you. Michael Andretti is going to stay out. So they believe in what they said. Of course, the yellow's going to help him a little, Jackaroo.
Well, here's what Robbie Gordon's going to have to do. He did hit the wall. He brushed it and bent the wishbone. So they're going to come in, and Derek Walker and the Valvoline team are going to check things over. You know, it's going to take a little while. They have to change that wishbone. It's on the right side. They're going to check it over. Let's go back up to you.
Now, the report is Robbie was all by himself up there. Other cars moved around to try to get away from it, but nobody else brushing the wall. Robbie did it all by himself. We're under yellow again. We'll be back.
This Ford Fact is brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealers. Have you driven a Ford lately?
The new rules package for 1996 in IndyCar racing primarily focuses on safety. Now, one of the great examples of that is the increased chassis strength to protect the driver. As a driver, one of the scariest types of accidents to have would be a near head-on collision where this front tire would impact the wall and then make its way towards the driver's compartment. The first place it would contact would be here at the side pod, which now they're required to be of honeycomb material and 3/8 of an inch thick. If the wheel was to make its way all the way to the cockpit, many chassis manufacturers between the instrument panel and the back of the seat have put a new piece of material in here made of Kevlar, the same material that's used in a bulletproof vest, meaning that it protects the driver from anything puncturing the chassis and injuring him. Now, you can also see visually that behind me, the cockpit side is higher than it was last year, where it came across at about this level. This higher cockpit side protects the driver from any sort of shrapnel that might hit his helmet. Now, so far, in 1996, we've had a couple of big crashes in IndyCar racing, and these new safety rules seem to have worked wonderfully.
Back at Nazareth, the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix, we tried to go green, but Raul Boesel had a problem, and here's exactly what it was. They were coming for the green flag, and you can see his engine starting to let go there, but good move by the starter, Jim Swimtel. He went green flag. Now, you can see Boesel in trouble there. He could have gone yellow at that point, but wisely he kept the green out until the field had made its way through, because they're already rolling. You don't want to stack them up at that moment. And as soon as everybody cleared, he went back yellow. So there's a fast-thinking official. Did a nice job there. Probably saved somebody some trouble.
Very good job. Very good thinking on the starter's part on that one, Paul.
So we are under yellow once again. Robbie Gordon is the cause originally for this yellow, Jack.
And he's out of the car. They couldn't repair the rear of the car. Robbie, it looked as if we rode on board with you on one of the replays. It looked like the car just literally got away from you there for a second.
Yeah, you know, we were fighting a power oversteer problem, and I was trying to roll back on the power. The car stepped out. I moved over. I was already on the outside line. That put me in the marbles when I corrected. And I just tried to keep it off the wall the best I could.
We've talked about the marbles before, the rubber that comes off the tires under race conditions and finds its way to the outside groove. What does it feel like for a driver when you get up in the marbles like that?
It feels like you're on sand on top of the asphalt. You know, with the tires getting softer and softer like we're doing with the tire war, you know, once I got in that outside groove, it was just trying to keep it off the wall.
Well, tough to see out. Let's check in with Gary Gerald. Gary?
Well, Jack, we're checking in down here in the Michael Andretti pit, and the concerns, of course, about any fuel considerations, having stopped last at lap 117, long evaporated, because with the yellow now, you can conserve all of that. So a lot of smiles down there. They're nervous. Michael's last victory on the streets of Toronto last season, like nothing better to be able to climb to the top of the podium today here in his hometown. Jack?
Gary, we've been monitoring the radio conversations between Hogan and Penske and their driver, Emerson Fittipaldi. And listen to what they just told him. They said, Emo, you are faster than Michael Andretti. Go after him. You can win this thing.
So it's back to green flag racing, and it looks like it's going to be a sprint to the finish now. 200 laps of scheduled distance. They're on the 177th lap. And look at the whirlwind head around.
Watch the people when they see the camera go by, like when they see close-up shots, look to the outside of the groove, and you can see all these marbles, little balls of rubber. And that's what happens to Robbie Gordon, some of the guys that get out there a little too far. They get on that, it's like on ball bearings.
Paul Tracy there already picks off Jimmy Vasser for 6th place and tries to move up through the rest of the field and catch the leaders. Front 5, Michael, Emerson, Al Unser Jr., Greg Moore, and Bobby Rahal. Tracy's got Pruitt just ahead of him, but Pruitt is off the pace and not a factor here. The front of the field, Michael has a 5-second cushion over 2nd place Emerson Fittipaldi because of the way they came back to the green flag with slower cars separating them.
Tracy's handling very good and going very fast. The problem is he's still down a lap. Although he was down 2 laps a whole lot earlier, it's probably been the fastest car in the race. Unfortunately, that bad pit stop has really cost him dearly. Information there on the bottom of the screen. The help of EBS, the official scoring of IndyCar. By the way, they're working on a worldwide web page that will have scoring in real time. They're not there on that one yet, but boy, that's the plan. Will that be cool? Put your computer over alongside your television set. Look at the bottom of the screen, but they got a lot of other information available too. Traffic is still such a problem. Just watch how hard it is. Now remember, the marbles on the outside. The fast cars have to pass the slow cars on the outside. They've really got to thread those cars just right on the track. Hit those marbles, it's like a suction cup taking you to the wall. Moore chases Little Al. Boy, take a look at that. Al Unser Jr. steadily falling away from the leader. From his position of 3rd place.
Emerson Fittipaldi rides alone. And here is the greatest threat for a position as Moore catches up to Little Al.
He hasn't given up on that for a long time. He'll keep pressuring Little Al. If Little Al gets caught in traffic or hits those marbles or just doesn't go too good, Greg will have him. He's in striking distance right now.
So we watch this fight, and we'll watch it all the way to the finish, assuming there's not another yellow. 184 laps complete, 16 to go.
Greg Moore in the blue and white car, Little Al in the red and white one just in front of him.
The assumption with that final yellow is there is no problem for anybody with fuel.
That's different this time, Paul. Almost every race here, fuel plays a giant factor, but the yellows make such a difference. See the groove difference of where they run between Little Al and Greg Moore there.
Al Unser Jr.'s team was asked about the fact that he was falling behind the leader. He said there's no problem at all. It's just the traffic that he's running through. Leader is still Michael.
The tires are also getting a little bit worn at this particular time. Only about 13 laps left.
The good news there is that we've had clear skies most of the day. Some clouds lay off over the hills of the Lehigh Valley, but the clear skies have at least kept the track consistent.
Certainly been good for the drivers and the engines. The colder it is, the better it is. Maybe not too good for the fans, but really good for the drivers and the engines.
There's your leader, Michael Andretti. 7.3-second lead as he crosses the line. Now you look back for the red car of Emerson Fittipaldi. There's your interval as Emerson flashes across the line.
Almost got what looks like the all-red car.
Now this battle between Greg Moore and Al Unser Jr. as Greg Moore makes the move. Greg Moore, I guess, whoa.
Now that's what I meant about the marbles. You see, he made a real nice pass on Little Al. He got into the marbles a little bit because he's gone a little faster than he should have been going. Little Al just went the same speed, went right back by him. Now, taught Greg Moore a lesson. Now let's see how smart the boy is.
You would have think that's one that he learned on his 2 wins here in the Indy Lights, but patience can be a major virtue.
These are the fastest cars in the world right here.
Now this battle, up until that moment at least, in keeping track, the bottom of the screen there has actually been pulling them forward and closing down on Emerson and Michael. In fact, there's Emerson.
Emerson's on the right there, the red car. Emerson's low to the left there right now. Little Al's the one behind him, the red and white car, and then Greg Moore, the blue and white one.
2 slower cars separate them. And Greg Moore is proving he wants that position as he tries to trap him coming off the corner. And Greg Moore grabs 3rd place away from Little Al. Emerson just ahead, 8 laps to go.
Greg Moore did a good pass on that. He baited Little Al down low, then got him all right on the outside. I don't think Little Al expected him there.
Now the traffic just ahead of Moore. He's a figure that they tend to recognize in their mirrors and give way. He's already around their A-hole. Johnstone sitting up there shouldn't be a problem. And now Greg Moore comes in direct contact with Fittipaldi.
Those young guys sometimes like Greg Moore just don't know the difference, Paul.
Or they're incredibly good.
Yes, they are. He's incredibly good for sure.
Michael Andretti pulled out a 12-second lead. If Michael wins here, he'll become only the 2nd driver to win from further back than 4th. He started in 5th. Arie Luyendyk won from 11th in 91.
Well, when Moore passed Fittipaldi there, he was so close to him, it looked like they almost touched.
195 laps complete. Look at Moore. Unbelievable.
That's
around Emo and Moore into 2nd. He started 13th, and now he's looking for Michael. But time is running out.
The passes that Greg Moore is doing right now are very hard and very close, sometimes very dangerous. Right there when he came off onto the back straightaway, he could have been pushed to the outer wall by that car that he was lapping. That was really a risk.
Michael Andretti has the lead of the race. Greg Moore comes around Fittipaldi, moves into second place.
Greg has found a groove on the outside. That's where he's doing all of his passing right now.
On board with the leader, Michael Andretti. Looking ahead for the flag stand.
He discovered that pass a little while, I started to say, Paul.
And the white flag will come out for Michael Andretti. 1 more mile to go. And Michael will put it back in the win column. And Newman Haas will have another victory. Something they do quite regularly every season. Michael Andretti on his final lap now of the 200 laps here in the Boss Spark Plug Grand Prix. Looking for career win number 31. Greg Moore coming toward the line in second place. As Michael comes off the corner, twin checkered flags are there. Listen to that crowd in front of the hometown. Michael Andretti takes his second win here at Nazareth. There's Greg Moore as he turns for home. And Moore comes across second. Followed by Fittipaldi and Al Unser Jr. Al Unser Jr. gets him right at the line. Wow, what a finish.
That's when it got all
Greg
the guys
Moore on the charge.
All the guys are right together, Paul. We could hardly see that little Al got by right at the very last.
So Michael Andretti takes the win. Ties him with Al Unser Jr. for the lead among active drivers in wins. And the crowd here in Nazareth loves it. His house is only about 3 miles from this racetrack.
That would be a happy boy. Hometown win. There's nothing better than that.
So we'll be back to talk with Michael Andretti as the winner of the race after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Michael Andretti came back from a pit stop, played the odds, averaged 140.9 miles an hour, and won with a 12-second margin of victory, Jack.
Well, Paul, take a look at what he rode with all day on a steering wheel. Get well, Marco, for his son who was injured. Hey, it's been a while since you've been to Victory Lane. You brought Ford, you brought Goodyear, and you brought Michael Andretti home. Congratulations.
We're excited. I want to dedicate this one to Marco and also to Tim Bumps' father, who's ill right now, and hope they get well soon. But it was just fantastic. What a day. I mean, the car, we had a feeling it was going to be like this because it ran really well all weekend, and it did. You know, the car just didn't miss a beat. The guys did a great job. We had a little stall in the pit stop, which was a scare, but it stayed together and ran well in traffic is where the key was.
Tell me how you maintain your composure when you get a stall like that on pit road, because I mean that makes my heart stop. I can't imagine what it does for you.
Fortunately, I've been there too many times, so I'm getting used to it. But you know, the guys that, you know, they didn't lose their cool. They got the starter on. We hardly missed a beat, so it was great.
Well, he only has to go about 3 miles to celebrate back home, but let's check in with Gary Gerald. Another guy's going to be celebrating north of the border.
Yes, indeed he is. Here's Greg Moore. And Greg, from 13th to a podium finish at second, but the sensation was those late race passes. Do you ever scare yourself out there?
No, I one time actually when I got inside Junior, then I just powered straight through and almost pushed up into the wall of the lap 190 when I first got by Junior. Got a bit of a scare there, but you know, the whole players team we're ecstatic. I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm just so happy.
You lost 5th gear during this event, but apparently it was of no consequence.
Well, I guess not. You know, apparently we turned the fastest race lap, and you know, we still finished second. I think we could have caught Mikey if we had a few more laps, but you know, it's my best finish, the team's best finish this year, and I couldn't be any happier.
Well, you talk about rising stars, you're looking at one. Paul?
No question about that. Now, don't forget, when our coverage is done here, ABC's Wide World of Sports 35th anniversary schedule. But also, when we come back, there's plenty more to talk about and plenty of people to talk with. Now, Michael Andretti celebrates in the winner's circle at the Boss Spark Plug Grand Prix. IndyCar is completing a 200-mile run at Nazareth Speedway here today. We got some other guys had a pretty good run today. One of them, Al Unser Jr., Jack.
Well, I'll tell you what. Now, turn 2 got a little exciting on that last lap, but it came out good for you.
Yeah, I just, you know, I want to say hi to my kids out there. It was a rough day today, and
And it was tough, you know. I was fighting a loose car all day today. I couldn't get any power down at all coming off of corners all day. I tried different tires and just tried to work with it all day, and I just couldn't get anything out of it. And then I made the mistake not following Mikey into the pits when I was running second. That put me at the tail end of the pack again. And you know, Penske was calling a great race. If his driver would have only listened to him, we would have done a little bit better job. So,
well, he still came home in a podium finish, but the guy he beat out is with Gary Gerould.
Emerson Fittipaldi still manages a smile. I know one of the priorities was to be able to finish, and you were able to do that, but I know, Emerson, you would like to be on the podium. Did something go wrong with the race car in those final laps that you couldn't protect that position?
No, Gary, I was boxed by Hurt, and I couldn't go on the outside of Hurt, and both Greg Moore and Junior, they are able to run on the outside of turn 2, and that's when I lost the position. I was just boxed behind. At that time, my car was pushing too much, and I couldn't go on the outside. That's a shame, because I was running strong the whole day.
Good to see you back as a contender, though. Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
Paul?
Emerson Fittipaldi. Well, what's this do to the points as the crowd heads home to talk about this when Jimmy Vasser is still managing to stay at the top of the points order? He's only been eclipsed once by Scott Pruitt, but now has a firm grip on it, followed by Junior, Pruitt, Moore, and here's the rest of the points order. So, Bobby, the battle still is an excellent fight in the championship. And in the Manufacturers' Championship, well, Honda's still on top, but today, well, that closed things up. Ford and Mercedes both had nice performance. Of course, Ford taking the win. In the Nations Cup, that's the United States. Looking very strong. You're going to get in a lot of trouble with that, Bobby. Still more to talk to and more to talk about from the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix. We'll be back. Bobby Rahal finishes in 6th place, Jack Arute.
And Paulie complained all day of just not enough grip. What does a driver do when you don't have enough grip?
Hang on. Yeah, no, it was not bad. Just we put an awful lot of laps on those tires the last run. We put almost 89 laps, I think, on them, and you know, that's far more than you would run, and I mean, that's probably taking them as far as you can. And unfortunately, I just got blocked in traffic there right at the end. I think got behind Emerson a little too close, and I just lost the front end, and that's all Paul needed to get by me. But you know, all in all, the car wasn't too bad. It was better than a lot of others, but you know, unfortunately, just not quite good enough.
Had his hands full all day, Gary Gerould, but not quite as much as Paul Tracy had. He really had his hands full.
Yeah, Jack, you're absolutely right. And Paul, I know it's this has been an emotional roller coaster ride. We mentioned the fact that you lost an uncle earlier this week who passed away in England. You had that on your mind today. Then this incident in the pits. How difficult was it for you to regain focus after you saw one of your team members go down?
Well, it really was. It was a tough situation to do. I came in, and I didn't think I was going too fast, but the tires were all blistered up, and I just couldn't stop, and I ended up hitting him, and then I was just, the look on his face was devastated me, and it broke a lot of my confidence during the middle of the race, and they didn't know how he was. And then later in the race, just before the last yellow, he came on the radio and said that he was all right, and he wanted me to kick some butt and get a good finish. So that got me motivated, you know, and it was tough because I was thinking about him a lot, hoping that he was all right, and then I was able to, you know, put on a bit of a charge. But the car was, after that, the car never really handled just right, but we were able to salvage a good finish for the Marlboro team.
Well, in fact, I wonder, you went 2 laps down, you got one of those back, you end up in 5th place, and you gained some very valuable points after it looked like it might be a totally bleak day.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look good after the first stop, but you know, the crew guys rallied. We came in and did a stop after that, and you know, they really worked hard, and everybody worked hard, but it wasn't our day, but hopefully at the US 500 it'll be ours.
Thank you, Paul. Let's check in now with Jack, who's with Christian Fittipaldi.
And Gary, kind of a marked contrast. Christian Fittipaldi here with just a couple of his crew members, while the rest of the Newman Haas crew is celebrating his teammate Michael Andretti's victory. Christian, your impressions of short oval racing. I mean, how busy are you guys in the race car?
Well, we were quite busy today. It was very crowded, the race. Basically, almost all of the cars finished the race, so it was a big traffic jam out there. And it depends on how the car is. It makes your day shorter or longer. In my case, it made my day very long. We just blistered 2 tires during the run, 2 sets of tires, and I also got a black flag. People don't even know why, and they think they got my car mistaken for another car. So definitely it made my day very, very long today. Like the car was just oversteering since lap 20, lap 30. And I'm happy for the team. I'm happy for Michael, and hopefully it's going to be better in Michigan.
That's what he's looking forward to, the next stop for these cars and stars.
All right, here are the unofficial results of the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix. We don't expect any protest to change this. Michael Andretti taking the win. Greg Moore's best career finish. Emo's best finish since he won here a year ago. Well, for Vasser, for Pruitt, for Al Unser Jr., they've all finished in the points in all 5 races this season. Jimmy Vasser remains the points leader. And it's the first win for Goodyear Tires this year. So those people in the engine and chassis and tire department may in fact have started a little behind. Seems like they've caught up here at the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix. Of course, the track has something to do with it. Well, they continue the celebrations down in the winner's circle here as the drivers climb to the podium. There's all 26 of the starters and how they finished, and here's Gary.
Jimmy Vasser is standing alongside, and Jimmy, you go out of this with still a 20-point lead in the championship, but I know compared to the emotions you felt in 3 of the preceding 4 events, this got to be a little bit of a downer today in a 7th place finish.
Well, you know, that's racing. You have tremendous highs and you have some lows, but you know, we did the best we could today. The whole Target Chip Ganassi team, you know, we never gave up. We had a car that wasn't, we didn't have our car working as good as we should have or could have, but you know, we finished 7th. This is a very difficult race, as you can tell, with the traffic and all that. And you know, it's important that we did finish, though, and get what we could. And we've been doing a lot of testing, getting ready for the US 500 next month in Michigan, and looking forward to going there and continuing on with the season.
A lot of people said that the Honda horsepower advantage wasn't a factor at this racetrack. Will it be a major factor at Michigan?
Well, I mean, there's so many factors in racing. It's engine, it's tires, it's great teamwork, you know, and you got to give credit to all the guys on the Target Chip Ganassi team and all the other teams. I mean, look at congratulations to Michael Andretti. They did a great job, and there's just so many factors in racing. You can't pinpoint one ingredient. You can't give a driver all the credit for a win or a loss. So it's a team sport.
No easy days in this sport. Good job.
Thank you.
Paul?
You know, victories are coming in many different ways. For example, for Jeff Krosnoff, finished his first IndyCar race, first one for Toyota, and finished in 18th position. Now, coming up next, we'll take a look at some of the highlights of the race today, and Bobby Unser will have a final comment. Well, Nazareth Speedway and the Bosch Spark Plug Grand Prix did it once again. A whirlwind of a race. Michael Andretti takes win number 2.
From my way of thinking, it was a very exciting race. I think everybody thought that was here. It was a driver's race, and I think that's what the fans and the people on television want to see.
You know, a nice time of year to come to this area of the country, the Lehigh Valley and everything. Look at all the beautiful blooms on the trees, nice rolling hills. Nice crisp day. We've been at beaches for the first 4 races, and now it's a little bit crisper. Well, Michael Andretti has taken the victory, and Greg Moore proved once again just how truly skillful he is as he carved up through the field and finished in 2nd place. Important to note, though, that Al Unser Jr. and Team Penske very much in the fight as Penske cars, chassis finished 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And Bobby Rahals feeling pretty racy as he comes home in 6th place, followed by the points leader, Jimmy Vasser, who remains in the lead of the points. So we've had another great weekend with the Indy cars, this time at Nazareth Speedway. So as we leave you, let's take a look back at this weekend past.